Slide 24 is a significant slide because it has a verse that most of us know. It simply says, train up a child in the way he should go. How many of you know that verse? Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not turn from it. Say that with me. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not turn from it. Now, go back to slide 4. There's some events that have been taking place this past week that have caused me to ask some very poignant questions, at least in my own life and in my own heart, and indeed in the life of the church. How many of you are familiar with what's going on with Chick-fil-A? And Debbie and I and the rest of my family went down there on Thursday to get a chicken sandwich and, to offer our support for Chick-fil-A. And the line was so long that we could not get in. And, not that we could not get in. We could have waited, but we were hungry. And so we decided to go over to In-N-Out. And we went across the highway to In-N-Out, and we were sitting there, and the lady, came by to wait on tables. I just want you to know we're here in honor of Chick-fil-A. As you know, In-N-Out is a Christian company. And so Chick-fil-A, I said, we're here in honor of Chick-fil-A. And she goes, well, you're not the only one. There's been others that have come in here to do that too. And I thought that was pretty cool. And I was asking the worship team in the back the significance of what's going on with Chick-fil-A, and they came up with some good things here. But I want to add my little take to it. As you know, Chick-fil-A, the CEO of Chick-fil-A made a statement in regards to his personal beliefs on gay marriage and other moral issues, and I'm right in line with those beliefs. And then there was some statements made by mayors of prominent cities stating along those lines, saying, we don't want Chick-fil-A in our city. And they said something along these lines. They said, because they do not reflect the values of their city. And that struck me. And the fact that he is stating for unequivocally for the values of that city, that Chick-fil-A and other companies like them, and indeed you and me, do not reflect the values of that city. That bothered me. And what got me to thinking was, how did this come about? How did this kind of promulgation of this particular thought and this particular lifestyle so permeate our society? And I think we could say that it has permeated our society. Even though a very small, minuscule percentage of the people actually live in that lifestyle, there's a large acceptance of that lifestyle that is creeping and flowing through our society. And I have come to ask the question, how? We could stand and we could talk about sin. We could talk about the effects of sin. We could talk about all of that. And we could say, well, we just need Jesus. And that's true and that's right and good. But I think there's a pragmatic way of looking at this as well. As I begin to talk to youth, and I've talked to several youth, and not just in our church, but basically everywhere I go, I say, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And you know what I'm finding among our youth is there's a dominant thought that is creeping through the mentality of our youth that simply says, why not? Have you witnessed that yourself? What's wrong? And then I begin to couple that with some statistics, and statistics that talk about why youth are leaving the church when they leave home to go to college. And I found this website and asked this and read this article on why teens leave the church upon entering college. And allow me just to read some aspects of this to you. In 2007, Ed Stetzer conducted a study for Lifeway Research which indicated that nearly 70% of the church youth leave the church at least a year between the ages of 18 and 22. However, approximately 35% resume church attendance at least twice a month, and another 30% attend more sporadically. So 62% of those come back to the church in some way, shape, or form, although I think the key word there is sporadically. They come back sporadically. And there were several reasons why they listed they leave the church for that period of time, and some of them permanently. And one of them is when they get to college, there's a logistical problem. For example, they're freshmen, and when they go to college as a freshman, some of them are not allowed to have vehicles, and so for them to get around and to get to a church logistically is just very hard. And also, we cannot forget the independence of a youth. When you left home, how many of you loved your independence? And you said, I don't want to do what mom and dad told me to do. All three of us, thank you. The rest of you, I don't know. Yeah, there was some form of independence to say, they do that. And then obviously some of them come back as well. But this third one really grabbed me. And it was the phraseology that they use, our youth are entertained but not equipped. And he goes on to say this. Contemporary churches expend great efforts to provide culturally relevant, highly entertaining programs that will attract young people. And then it goes on. Parents pay large sums to provide their teens with stimulating technology to keep their teens happy and harmonious at home. However, there is a tendency to focus more on entertaining youth than on equipping them to understand and defend the Christian worldview. In this secular university system, students receive immense pressure from professors and peers to adopt an anti-Christian bias. Here's what they're saying. They're saying, we as a church, and let's talk about New Hope. Can we? It's good to talk about all the churches, but let's talk about New Hope. What they're saying, if we're not careful, we can spend a lot of money to entertain our youth, but not to equip them. We can focus on them having a good time. We can focus on having the great trips here and there, but if we don't solidify them in the Word and solidify them in a personal relationship with God, it means nothing. Thank you for your amen. It means nothing. We have got to do something. They asked me to ask some questions. And in fact, I came up with some interesting facts. Let me share these interesting facts to you. Do you know that an average school, there's 180 days of school for the average student in our school systems around the United States? And then there's 6.5 average school hours per day, which means in a year, there's 1,170 hours that student spends in school. Add to that 32 hours on average every week that that child spends in front of the television and related media technology. You look at as well as the average student or average child who goes to football practice or cheerleading practice or basketball practice and every other type of situation, roughly 10 hours per week that is used for the honing of those skills and utilization so that they could win a game. Now, I want to add into that the average hours per week in church. 1. Because the average days in church is 52 days per year. I want you to look at the comparison in these two numbers. The average days per year is 52, and then we draw an arrow up to the average hours per year in school, 1,170. Now, I don't think I need to stand here and say, now, some of the things I'm going to say here are really generalizations. I know that it's not true in every situation. We have a lot of Christian teachers. I don't deny that. And I don't deny that there are some campuses where God is doing great things. But let's just talk in generalizations. Generally, there's an extremely liberal philosophy that is preached and taught to our students. And when you couple 1,170 hours to 52 hours, the overwhelming predominance of that thought is going to have a huge impact in a child. Now, I'm not saying church is the answer. I think it's an important answer, but you have to couple it with the family. You have to couple it with things that are going on at home. And indeed, the family bears the brunt of the responsibility to making sure that kids are trained and nurtured in the admonition of the Lord, according to what the Scripture says. But what has happened over these past several years, where we used to have, remember, Sunday morning service, and we used to have Sunday night service, and then we used to have a Wednesday night service. How many of you remember those days? Well, we had a Sunday morning service, and then Sunday night service kind of fizzled out. What happened to Sunday night services? Here's what happened. Let's get the kids home to bed because it's school night. What happened to Wednesday night services? Let's get the kids home to bed because it's school night. And we find that there is this predominant urge to make sure that school dominates every aspect of our life. We make sure the kids get their homework done. Now, by the way, I'm all for homework. I gotta put that down. We need to do our homework. We need to be schooled. I'm not saying throw the schools out. That's not my point today. I'm just saying that we as a church have to do something significant. Let me put this chart up here, if you would, Lisa, just click that one time. And I have here a number of squares, and these squares represent the time that is spent in activities outside of your faith. Basketball, soccer, school. And the little white square in the bottom right hand represents the time that we spent being, quote, filled with the gospel. It's a huge, huge discrepancy. And in fact, here's what happens. We say, I take my child to church, but I take them to church. You know, and yet they're surrounded by so much, and we carve out this 1 hour a week, and we're supposed to think that 1 hour is going to make a huge difference in the life of that child. I want it to be. I hope it is. But let's face facts. Things like Chick-fil-A take place because there is the preponderance, or I call it pressure over time. That's how you win politics. You just keep pressure until the bubble bursts. And what happens in Chick-fil-A situation, they push it and to see if there's a fight back. And thankfully there was a fight back. But they're going to push again. And they're going to push again. Why? Because the younger generation is being raised in this type of theology and this type of thinking. And eventually they're going to win over until that bubble bursts, and that which took place at Chick-fil-A is going to be non-existent. Oh, I could tell you don't believe me. Let's take them to church. You know what we do even worse? Grasp this. A child comes home and he's in trouble. And I've seen this firsthand. A child comes home, not here. A child comes home, and because they got in trouble in school, you know what the parent says? You got in trouble. You can't go to youth group tonight. You can't go to youth group. Now the church is a punishment. See? Now, what about this? I'm hitting some toes, but that's okay. Yeah, a child comes home and he says, and the parent says, oh, I know you're tired. You've had a hard week after your school classes, homework, sports, practice, television, computer, phone usage, and staying out late with your friends. You probably should stay home and rest so that you're ready for school tomorrow.